the Federal Housing Agency. So
Yeah.
FHFA extends COVID-19 REO eviction moratorium through September 30th, 2021. On Friday, the FHFA announced that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, the enterprises, are extending the moratorium on single-family real estate-owned REOs evictions until September 30th. The REO eviction moratorium applies to properties that have been acquired by an enterprise through foreclosure or deed in lieu of foreclosure transactions. The current moratorium was set to expire on July 31st, 2021. The pandemic continues to have an outsized impact on the ability of Americans to meet their monthly rent or mortgage payments. Today's extension of the eviction moratorium protects particularly vulnerable Americans who otherwise would be at risk of losing a place to live, said Acting Director Sandra L. Thompson. The REO eviction moratorium is just the latest step FHFA has taken to benefit homeowner renters and mortgage market during the pandemic. So this is happening. Yesterday, Bernie Sanders, AOC, were out there marching, I think, in D.C., talking about the fact that we should extend this. There's arguments on both sides. What are your thoughts on this?
So, listen, you want to be humanitarian, and these are properties that are owned by the FHFA. So it's not the same as if you have some of these eviction moratoriums that people are faced with who are landlords. And you could see both sides of it. You certainly want to be humanitarian in the landlord side, but you definitely want to also try and be somewhat sympathetic to the person who's being evicted. I mean, both sides, you could definitely see it. Because a lot of people who are landlords aren't necessarily large corporations. They're just people that are hardworking, middle-class people. They purchase a home because they'd like to.
These are landlords.
Landlords, yeah. You know, and in this particular case, it's the FHFA. So this is a government agency here. But the moratorium that's currently in effect for renters is something that you want to be humanitarian and sympathetic, but you also need to think about what's that landlord going through. That's just an individual that's purchased that home and now is faced with somebody living there in their home.
Where are we at right now with that? Because if this is FHFA, we get it.
It's supposed to be the end of August that's been postponed.
That's going to be.
Yeah, but I think that given this Delta variant has now become more prevalent, there's a good chance that gets.
So here's the problem I have with that. The problem I have with it is the fact that states were given $45 billion, okay, to help tenants and landlords. $45 billion to help tenants and landlords, okay? You know, according to New York Times story that came out yesterday, what percentage of that $45 billion has been given to tenants and landlords? Do you know what percentage of $45 billion?
Less than 25.
7%. So here's my chance. And by the way, this is New York Times. We're not talking New York Post.
Right. No,
it's New York Times writing this. So this isn't New York Post, which some may say it's a conservative paper. So if $45 billion has been given to states to give to tenants and landlords, and that money hasn't gone to them, and you want to extend, you can't tell me to extend it if you're hanging on to the money that you're supposed to help me out to. If you give me the money, I'll sit there and say, okay, fine. But if you're hanging on to the money and only giving 7% of the $45 billion, which is only $3 billion, what do you want me to do with this?
What's their justification for holding on to 93% of the money?
Because they can't. What are you going to tell them? You're going to write a negative review on Yelp? You're going to go out there and Yelp and say,
some people that would.
Good luck with the government.
Yeah.
No, but go to a government place and say you're going to write a negative review on something and see what they tell you. That money's not coming to you. So in a situation like this, at what point do you say, listen, you guys got to figure something out. I can't keep extending this. I think the unemployment, if you remember the unemployment during Obama, it kept extending, 6 months, and then it went 9 months, and then it went 12 months, and then it kept going, extending. Yeah, it was a long time that it kept going. It was nearly, 24 months is where it got to. I think 99 weeks was the number, right? And the moment you stopped unemployment benefits, guess what happened to people? The moment you stopped,
they go back to work.
They went back to work.
There's something interesting about that. And I know it's one of the stories you want to cover, but this is a really interesting thing. Right now, there's 9.2 million job openings, and people are pointing to that, and the Fed's pointing to that. This kind of leads us into the Fed as well. But the Fed's saying, we're not seeing maximum employment. Well, if you're paying people $18 an hour to stay home, guess what? They're going to stay home. But there's an interesting phenomenon that takes place. So half the states, roughly, have now said we're going to end this additional benefit. And what they've seen is something that's fascinating. The number of job creations goes up, but so does the unemployment rate. So people are scratching their heads and they point to the unemployment rate and said, oh, it's not really a benefit. Well, what happens is when you don't look for a job for 4 weeks, you are now a discouraged worker. So you literally do not get counted as unemployed.
Yeah.
As soon as you come off that and you start looking for a job, you start off as unemployed. But so your unemployment numbers worsen initially. But you at the same time have some of those people who find jobs. So if you have 10 people go back, 5 found a job, now you have 5 people that are counted as unemployed. It actually makes the unemployment numbers look worse while jobs are being created look better. But it depends on what side you're on and what you want to point to. You always find what you're looking for. So if you point to job creation, so things are good.
Yeah.
But eventually, as these people then come back to finding a job and getting a job, the unemployment numbers should come down. So on Labor Day, we're supposed to see an end to this additional benefit. So I'd imagine you'll probably see the unemployment rate in September and maybe in October get worse while jobs are created, but then it should start to catch up and you should
Do you
start
see
to
it going past September?
The Delta variant is something that people are very concerned about. Everybody's talking about masks indoors and this and that. And I think Facebook today said they're requiring all employees, whether you're vaccinated or not, to have a mask. I don't really quite understand that. But it's something that individuals are going to be faced with now going back to work or childcare based on this. And it might kick the can down the road. It might prolong it.
So if you enjoyed this little short segment from the podcast that we did, here's another short segment to watch. Or if you want to see the entire podcast, click over here. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.